One.
All right, how you doing? Taylor Barton here from the 7 On and 5 On Association with Brandon Huffman from 247 Sports. Everyone knows Huff. You guys see the video right there. You know who's on, you know why. So Huff, I'll get to you in a sec. Just wanted to start this out. This is our podcast for our pre-tournament Battle in the Bay, second annual Battle in the Bay. Super excited about the Northern California area. Huff, you and I have talked for a lot of years about how everyone knows how talented Southern California is and talks about that. But Northern California is so loaded with talent. You can name the different cities and programs and kids coming out of there. I think you would be hard pressed to find a college anywhere in the country at any level that doesn't have a kid on their roster from the central or northern California area. A lot of high profile kids you're seeing in the NFL, a lot of difference makers there. So very excited to do this one. Real quick, just your overall thoughts maybe on this tournament, the area that we're going to, the Northern Cal area, and then we'll jump into some of the specific programs competing.
Yeah, when you get to tout the greatest football player of all time as being from your backyard, you win. Northern
Money.
California gets to have that. And, you also get a potential vice presidential candidate also from Northern California
There you go. There
in
you
Aaron
go.
Rodgers. But yeah, I mean, it was 3 years ago, 4 of the first 5 players from the state of California drafted were from the East Bay. And we all know Mater Dei, we all know Bosco, but I mean, you look back historically, the greatest high school football tradition of all time was De La Salle and their streak. So Northern California is no slouch when it comes to football. And the event last year was awesome in the Bay. You're back there this year with a lot of talent, and it's having Cal and Stanford, those ACC programs, Cal and Stanford teams are wanting to come around and visit them. And you're expanding where it's not just Northern California teams that are going to be there. You got some teams from outside the state of California, and one that I've been a big fan of, my guy Warner Pukahi and Rebel Squad. We could start right there with the Rebel Squad. If you guys know anything about Hawaii high school football, Punahou or Manti Te'o went, St. Louis, Marcus Mariota, Tua Tagovailoa. You have the team that's won the last couple state championships and has been, I think at one point it had the most players in the NFL of any high school at one time. That was Kahuku High School. And the Red Raiders have won the last 2 state championships in Hawaii. In fact, they beat St. John Bosco last year, did lose to Mater Dei, but that team, the Red Raiders, that's a loaded squad. Of the Rebel Squad is a lot of those Kahuku kids. So Aiden Manutai, Mana Carvalho, they got 2 of the top 5 players in the state of Hawaii, a lot of young guys, Madden Solai, just a great program. This team's won a couple of major 7-on-7 championships. So I think folks are going to be very excited. And if they win, you're going to get a celebratory Hawkeye.
I know it. I want to see them win just for that. That's going to be, those videos will be going viral. We're going to be on the plane afterward talking about it. And yeah, super excited. It's Rebel Squad out of Hawaii, and getting them to come out is really cool. And in 2 years in our Northern California tournament, we've had teams from Anchorage, Alaska, Hawaii, Dallas, Texas. This year we got programs coming in from a bunch of different states and all the way from Hawaii. So really excited to see Rebel Squad. It's my first time, but I know you mentioned that they've done really well in tournaments, and it was a couple years ago, Pylon Mecca, they made the championship game. Is that correct?
They did, and then they won it. In fact, they beat our guys from Orange County, Coach Frank and
Nighthawks. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nighthawks. We just saw them up in Vancouver. So it's really fun to see all these different programs, now hitting our circuit, where we started out in the Northwest with Northwest teams and have grown to areas and now have teams coming in every tournament. We have teams, flying in from different states, different regions. And it's really cool because for the teams in the local area, when we come to do a tournament, now they're not just playing teams down the street that they play in their normal tournaments. They get these outside programs and teams coming in and get to play them and do it on a big stage. So really cool to have Rebel Squad. Let's jump into the next program, Huff. Let's talk about DB Select. Coach T Downs running that program. DB Select out of the Sacramento area. I know they did our Seattle tournament last year, had Philip Bell, which is a name that rings out nationally. They are an awesome program. They got multiple teams in this tournament at the different age groups. Talk a little bit about DB Select and that program and some of the kids.
Yeah, DB Select is one of the better programs in Northern California, not just in the Sacramento area, but Northern California. Always has really good young talent, and probably their best underclassman is a kid named Savion Bandy out of El Cerrito High School. El Cerrito has sent a number of players. They've been a really good program in terms of sending out DBs. In fact, I remember a few years ago at one of the early 7-on-7 Northwest tournaments, one of the DBs that played at El Cerrito that went to Washington State was one of the refs. And Savion Bandy is kind of their next up-and-coming defensive back. So he plays for DB Select. Trey Janota, who is a 4-star defensive lineman out of North Carolina, but he's a West Coast guy. Mom played at Cal, played basketball at Cal. She was the women's basketball coach at North Carolina Central, but coached at USC and UCLA. So Trajan's actually a West Coast guy, but he's played tight end on the 7-on-7 circuit. We see that a lot, TV. That's what I love about this. A lot of these guys that they're D linemen or O linemen, but they come on the circuit and they want to go play tight end. We saw it with Josiah Sharma. We'll talk about him in a second. But Trey Janota, man, he moves like a tight end, but he plays defensive line. So, DB Select always has good young talent. Elijah Huddle's another kid that I like, a tight end there. Brandon Lambert. So there's some talent on the DB Select squad that is going to be around for a couple more years.
Yeah, speaking of that, just a couple, as I've done some research on them and gone online and looked up, you got Deacon Holden, QB from Christian Brothers High, one of the best QBs in the area, started varsity as a freshman. So that's a kid, he's, I think, class of 26. Class of 25, Isaiah Jordan. DB.
Got some offers already.
One of their best DBs, got a couple offers, Air Force, Army. There's a kid, Will Green, really excited to see him. He's out of Vista del Lago. You talk to people in the area and they say he's one of the most slept on receivers in Sacramento. So I think he's going to be a kid over this offseason, the spring and the summer, that's going to pick up some offers. So excited to see him.
Brandon, I was just sleeping because apparently that's all we ever do, TV.
Is sleep on people? Is that what you said?
Sleep on people. I do have a sleep disorder. I don't even sleep during the night. How am I sleeping on a player?
Yeah, you don't need melatonin. You just need to join 247 Sports or a media outlet. You're sleeping on kids, all of us. Yeah. Two other names, class of 25, running back Brandon Lambert out of Grant High, really talented, just transferred in. And then class of 26 DB Savion Bandy out of El Cerrito. And he has a couple offers, UNLV, San Diego State, Washington State. So really excited to see that program, that team, those kids. T Downs does a great job with them. So excited to see them. Let's stay in Sacramento, Huff, with CUC. We got Trey Taylor runs that program. They were just down in our LA tournament. They've got a lot of talent. You mentioned Josiah. So talk a little bit about CUC and another good program out of the Sacramento area.
Yeah, we mentioned like with Trey Janota, with Josiah Sharma, we've seen him, he was down in the Bay or in LA 2 weeks ago. And I'll tell you what, man, Josiah Sharma, one of the top defensive linemen in the country. He's a 4-star. He's going to be visiting Alabama at the end of the month. He was a commit to Washington at one point, committed the day of the Sugar Bowl, and then decommitted when Kalen DeBoer left. But he's down to about 308, and every time I see him, he's losing more and more weight. We saw him at the Avery Strong Showcase last year. He had just gotten his first offer from Washington at that time. But Lono Shatau is kind of their young, or not their young, their top skill guy. Played at Intercom High School in Sacramento. DB's got some offers as a safety, as a receiver, a big, long, 6'4", 180-pounder, 185-pounder, two-way prospect, a guy that I think probably has a brighter future as a DB. I think one of the advantages of seeing so much 7-on-7 is you see a lot of guys that their heart is on offense, but their head and their bigger paycheck could come on defense. And he's one of those guys that look at the length and the frame, and with a lot of the bigger receivers that are a little faster, bigger DBs that can cover those receivers are going to be at a premium down the line.
Right.
So he's a guy that I think his future might be better at safety than it is at receiver, but it's good to have options. If you can be a two-way guy, go play both ways.
When you see a lot of kids like that, I played at Colorado with a guy who was our fourth string tight end, big 6'7", 260 pound. For a tight end, not super fast or athletic, but a couple years later, I'm watching the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl, and he's their starting left tackle.
That's crazy.
And he had moved to tackle, and now you go from being the least athletic tight end in the unit to the most athletic lineman, put some weight on, and there you go. So to go with what you're saying, for a lot of these kids, it's like, look, put your pride to the side and look at your long-term best interest. And man, if you could go get a scholarship or a higher level scholarship playing this other position, or even go get paid someday down the road, that sounds like the wise move to me to make. And you and I see this all the time. So a lot of these kids, you'll see that, yeah, he's a good receiver, but he'd be a better DB, or he's a good tight end, he'd be a better tackle. He's a good
And sometimes
safety,
the
but he'd be a better
receivers'
linebacker.
hands tell you that you're a DB.
Yeah. 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 True that. Okay, let's jump to this program. I'm very excited about this one. Elevate out of Stockton. Vince Carter runs this program, and Vince, one of my favorite guys in this industry, just does such a good job. And you talk about a really established program that has super talent every year, always wins, is very competitive, and is always having kids sign and go on, and like national headline name type kids. Vince does a really good job. This is the first tournament this year. Elevate did a couple last year. They came up to Seattle. This is the first one on our circuit this year they're doing. So talk about Elevate, the program, Vince, and some of the kids on it.
Yeah, I mean, they've got one of the premier players on the West Coast, and Chris Lawson, who's been fantastic at just about every event he's been at this year. And he plays at San Francisco Reardon, where the MVP 2 weeks ago was his quarterback, Mikey Mitchell, his MVP, or his teammate at Reardon. But Mikey Mitchell will tell you that, part of the reason he's had such good success at Reardon was because of his receivers. So you got Chris Lawson, who's a 4-star receiver, top 247 guy. And then his other receiver, Sinai Thomas, who's a sophomore, also at Reardon, who's been the other guy at Elevate. And in fact, when I saw the KT Prep tournament back in February, they won a game in the last minute and ended up winning the championship over KT Prep, who won the LA tournament. And Sinai had a catch in, I think, the quarterfinals that won the game for them. So, it's you got to go try stop Sinai Thomas or Chris Lawson. Then you got Sinai Thomas, who's got double-digit offers. They've got a young quarterback. Ryan Walker is one of their coaches. His son is an 8th grader who's been an MVP at a couple of tournaments as a youth, but he's been playing as an 8th grader on their high school team. They've got Jermaine Barrett at corner at Sarah High School. We mentioned Tom Brady a little bit earlier. Jermaine Barrett is one of the top returning DBs at Sarah High School. You got Attain Pritchard and Dom Calhoun, who are a pair of safeties at Pittsburgh High School, where we saw Jaden Rashada come from a couple of years ago. Right. And Pritchard and Calhoun both have Power 5 offers, or Division I offers together. So there's talent on both sides of the ball for Elevate. And like you said, they're always competitive. And I mean, just about every tournament I've been to this year, they've been, a semifinalist or a quarterfinalist or won a couple of these tournaments. So they're a team that, always got talent, and they got a lot of young talent as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think going into this, I put Elevate as the favorite to win it, especially being kind of in their backyard. They're holding it down for their home turf. I think Rebel Squad, DB Select, a few of these others are going to have something to say about it, but excited to see them. Couple other programs to mention, Huff. Let's jump over to the Bay Area, Silly U. Coach Dame and what he does with that group. And I remember Silly U years ago having a really elite big time tight end, and saw them come up to Seattle, and was impressed with them. And then they've been up to our Seattle tournament and our Bay Area tournament and our LA tournament. So they've done a bunch with us over the years, and it's been fun having them in it. Talk a little bit about Silly U as a program and some of the players.
Yeah, I remember that year that they came up to Seattle and lost in the battle in Seattle in overtime.
Yeah.
And ran through that tournament. They were the number one seed, lost in overtime to Air in a great game. But they had one of the most electric players who ended up signing, who went to a JUCO and then ended up signing, I want to say with Nevada in this last offseason. And he had one of the best players I've ever seen at an association event. Took a little slant, about a 3 yard pass,
That's
and then
right.
outrun and juked everybody, which it's hard to do when it's touch. It's easier to do when it's tackle and you got to get an angle, but he was juking guys for 35 yards to get upfield. And so, Silly U won passing down a couple weeks ago in the Bay Area. Dame always does a great job and getting a lot of guys that play with just a chip on their shoulder. They may not necessarily be the biggest names in the Bay, but man, those guys go to work when it comes to 7-on-7. And they're always, they got those flashy orange uniforms that you can always
Yes.
tell from far away that Silly U's playing.
Yes. I love having them in and watching them compete and do their thing, and seeing their coaches animated on the sidelines, and they're definitely worth the price of admission to just watch and see how they get down.
Oh yeah.
Really enjoy having them. Looking forward to seeing them this weekend. Another program to talk about, Team Swag, to get into them. Another Northern Cal program. I SWAG is what it is, and it's Coach Hilliard. He does a great job there. I know he's also into other sports, so Swag is not just football. They have some basketball event, really tied in the area, does a lot for the kids in that area. Talk a little bit about Swag and Coach Hilliard.
Yeah, they're from the Central Valley of California, kind of the Merced area. A lot of guys from that area in the Merced, Atwater kind of region. A lot of guys that, sometimes they get overlooked a bit when it comes to colleges, really recruiting them. As we know with college coaches, they're not always the most aggressive in terms of trying to get out and seeing new players. And so every year Swag comes to a tournament and they got a couple of guys who are like, hey man, how's this guy not getting recruited? Hey, nobody's coming by the school. And those guys end up going to the Fresno States of the world, and Fresno State ends up pummeling some of these teams, like when Fresno State went out to Purdue this year and shut them out. And that's what Swag Mirco has. They always got a couple of guys that are just being overlooked by colleges, and then they make plays and they can get out there and play. So again, much like Silly U, they got a lot of guys that kind of play with the chip on their shoulder because they're not necessarily getting the attention from colleges like other schools are or like other players are. And they kind of just show, okay, well, this is our chance, this is our moment, let's do it.
Yeah, I'm excited. That's what I love about what we do. A couple years ago, battle in the beach down in LA. You had Luke Duncan from KT Prep, quarterback, ended up signing with UCLA. You had Aiden Childs for Goon Squad, ended up signing with Oregon State. Now he's at Michigan State. Neither of them were super high profile coming into it. We saw them and kept talking like, wow, look at this kid. This kid's real deal, seeing everything he was doing on the field, leading his team. And that's what's fun is we get to see some of these kids that really get on a stage now and can make a name for themselves, move up radars. A couple of Swag kids to talk about. You got Quintel Dupree, a quarterback at Merced. He's playing quarterback, but also some wide receiver and tight end. He's starting to get some traction with colleges. I think this event and the rest of the spring, summer is going to help him. His twin brother, Jordan, plays wide receiver and DB for them. A sophomore I'm really interested to see is AJ Banks. He's out of Atwater High School. He's an athlete for Team Swag. Really dynamic player on both sides of the ball. You got a sophomore, Jeremy Garcia, at Merced High School, leading wide receiver last year. He's big, long, good frame. Looking forward to seeing him. So definitely some kids and names in that program that I think over the next few months are going to be kids that are going to be posting offers that they've gotten and getting a lot of attention. So this is kind of the start when you get to kind of mid-March into April, May, and then into
You
June
just
and
took
the
the
summer
words right out of my
showcases.
mouth. That's exactly it, because you go back to Luke Duncan and Aiden Childs. And I know we talk about those two a lot, but they're kind of the success stories of the association events in that you have that sweet spot of March where the evaluation period starts in mid-April. So you've got to make the most of the opportunities that you have in March. So that way, when April comes around, coach is like, hey, there's a lot of buzz about this kid. We need to get out there and go see this kid and watch him throw or watch him work out or watch him run and maybe take that relationship to the next level. So this is that opportunity. We saw it with the team that won the Bay Area last year. Wall Street from Dallas. They had a couple of guys that were kind of, just lightly recruited. They come out, they have a great weekend. All of a sudden, stock starts to rise.
Well, yeah, and Cal Berkeley ended up signing one of the linebackers, and then they had a
Right.
tight end that was getting offers from a bunch of Big Sky and Power Five schools. And that's another cool thing, Huff, that we talk about with our circuit that we've started doing the last couple of years, and it's been awesome, is we're focused on running our events and running great events with our branding and making sure games are on time, and we've got refs and field supervisors and no fights and just coordinating all of that. But a cool thing we tied into is also the college visits in all of the areas, because it's so cool for programs to come in and come to Northern Cal and be able to hit up Marshall Charrington at Cal Berkeley and go do a visit. And that's what Wall Street from Texas did last year. And Marshall said, we would have never watched the film of this linebacker because he's in Dallas, he's far away, we wouldn't see him. But when we knew he's coming to the tournament, they're going to come by a visit. Now we'll go watch film. Really liked him, saw him in person, end up offering him, and the kid signs it. And we've seen that when we do our Boise tournament, teams do a Boise State visit. Our Portland tournament in a few weeks, teams are doing an Oregon State and Portland State visit. Our Seattle tournament, people do a UW visit. So it's really cool to get those tie-ins. And I mentioned that because another program we have coming in that's making their first appearance on our circuit this year is Rain out of Boise, Idaho. Run by John Lammers. And John is a OG in this industry. He was the guy running the first programs in Boise, Idaho. Boise's really exploded and just the state of Idaho with new programs and teams and a lot of talent that comes with the attention that they start getting. And John was on the front lines of that, getting it going. Is a good friend too, just a really good guy. So they've got their team coming out. They're doing a visit at Cal, I believe on Friday, to get their kids over and check it out. So it's really cool that people can package those together, the visit and come in on the tournament. Another program to mention is West Coast Preps. They were in our LA tournament. They're also going to do our Portland tournament in a couple of weeks. You got A-Ray running that program. They're based out of San Jose, but I know they draw kids from all over. They also run a really good site, social media site that covers not just football, but other sports all around the Northern California area, and has a lot of traction. So been really cool getting to know A-Ray and that group of guys in that program. And they're very competitive. They're one of those teams that they're my dark horse in this tournament. I really feel like they could make a run. There's a couple others that are more high profile, but I think West Coast Preps could be the team in this tournament that just, if they put it all together, could make a run and end up holding the hardware at the end of the weekend. So I'm excited to see them this weekend. Couple new programs to mention that frankly I just don't know anything about. We have programs that come through and do multiple tournaments in our circuit. We know a lot about, and then there's other ones that this is their first time ever being in any of our tournaments, and I'll mention them. You've got YOW Yao. We got Galt High School, where the tournament is in Galt. So we got a local high school team. There's another program called Never Sleep. There's another program called Born Beast. And there's another program called The Lock. So I'm excited to talk about them after the tournament. Once we see them and know more, we just don't know. And that's what's really cool about this circuit, is you get a mix of returning programs that we know a lot about, that we've learned a lot more about. And then you always have those new programs that you just know nothing about and get to see some of those kids. You get to see the program, and then we're able to talk about them afterward on social media, videos, photos, interviews, all of that. So I mentioned all of those programs because they're new in our circuit, new in our tournament. So excited to see them. And then a couple others to mention. They don't have a high school team in the tournament this week, but they have youth teams, and they're some of the programs that names ring out, not just in Northern Cal, but nationally. You got KT Prep, TMP, and TMP 209. TMP 209 in our LA tournament, out of the 5 divisions, won 3 of them in the youth division. So they're coming back trying to defend the crown this tournament. TMP run by Terrence Leonard. He's a national name that rings out. College coaches know him. I mean, you see a collage of photos with him and college coaches from every corner of the country. Coach T is a legend in this game. And then KT Prep, you got the Kenyon brothers, Nathan and Julian, who are some of our favorites. And the KT Prep program, again, name rings out nationally. They got kids from their program playing on rosters, college rosters all around the country. Maurice Jones-Drew, his son, two sons are in that program. So we had a chance to see them in LA. We'll see them this weekend as well. So excited to see these different programs. Going to be another fun weekend. We also have our 5-on-5 going. Real quick, just to mention that, because we got Elevate has their 5-on-5 in. We have TDC in there. And then we also have Big 12 coming down from the Northwest who has a bunch of kids. So that'll be fun, the 5-on-5 portion on Sunday to throw in there. So going to be another fun tournament. Love getting down to the Northern Cal area. We're actually, shout out to Sac State Cherokee Valeria, DB coach, DC, one of the best recruiters in the country at any level. Andy Thompson, a good friend of mine. We go back he's a day one of mine, head coach there. Our staff's going to swing by there when we get into the Sacramento airport on Friday. So fun to get in and see some of these coaches and schools. Glad these programs could line up visits. Going to be a fun weekend. So Huff, I'll give you the final word on anything. I like letting you finish saying something, because you're the reason people are tuned in. Definitely not me. I've been told I have a face made for radio. I still don't know what that means. I think people are trying to insult me, but I still haven't figured that out. A face made for radio. Maybe you guys could tell me, but I'll let you have the last word, Huff.
I've always taken that as flattering, because you're so good looking that they want to put you on the radio to let people focus on the game rather than.
I'm not a piece of meat.
Yeah, exactly. We have brains, eyes and ears, folks. No, Bay Area, Northern California, Sacramento, always loaded teams. I love the fact that this event is, almost getting international on TV. You're covering international waters, Pacific waters. You have people flying overseas, literally, to be here. And I think that lends the credibility to the event when you got teams that will come from states far and wide to participate. So this should be a great event, guys. Please, no stupid shenanigans like we unfortunately had a couple weeks ago in Los Angeles. Again, leave that other stuff at home. There doesn't need to be. And parents, stay the hell off the field and don't act like jackasses, mom and dads. Yes, I'm talking to all the parents who always find it a reason to act like idiots. And I saw it during the LSU South Carolina basketball game the other day. And brother of a player jumped onto the court, and then he was like, "What am I going to do?" Like, parents, you don't need to be on the court. All right. And maybe tell your kids to get it under control. Coaches, keep yourselves under control, keep your players under control, keep your parents under control. Because the one way to ensure that I won't write about your team is to have your kids act like dumbasses at the events. And coaches, you guys can control that better than anybody.
There you go. You heard it from the man himself. Appreciate the time, Huff. I know it's valuable for you, and thoughts and prayers with you on family situations too. I know that you're the ultimate professional handling, man, watching you over the years handle personal issues and still maintaining the professionalism to do your job and cover these kids and programs who are so reliant on you to help them and shine a light on them. It's inspirational to see, as just from a business side, but also as a good friend. So appreciate your time. Safe travels with everything you're doing, and we'll jump on the next podcast. Next podcast is our Olympia and then our Portland one. So we're in the heart of the circuit now. All right.